Today, we are exposing the peanut butter brands that have been misleading families for decades. And most people have no idea. Because peanut butter is supposed to be two ingredients, peanuts and salt. That is the entire product. But the most popular jars on the shelf right now contain hydrogenated oils, synthetic emulsifiers, added sugar, and in one case, a 5-year contamination history that the FDA put in a formal warning letter. 7 brands investigated, the safety records, the real ingredient lists, the labeling tricks designed to make you feel confident before you even flip the jar over. We start with the ones to avoid, then reveal the 3 that are actually clean. The worst one on this list is probably already in your kitchen. Let's get into it. Number 7. Great value. This is the one you grab when the budget is tight. No mascot, no heritage story, no tagline. Just a container and a price. And honestly, that seems refreshing at first. No brand illusion, just peanut butter. Here is the problem. Great value contains sugar, fully hydrogenated vegetable oil, and mono and diglycerides. The exact same additive profile as the name brand jar sitting right beside it. The price is lower. The formula is not. The savings come from cutting the marketing budget, not the ingredient list. But the bigger issue is the transparency gap. No peanut sourcing disclosed. No aflatoxin testing results published. No independent quality certification anywhere on the label. Aflatoxin is a naturally occurring carcinogen produced by mold that develops on peanuts during harvesting and storage. It accumulates with daily use over months and years. Every major brand in this category has some responsibility to address that question. Great value provides no answer at all, and there is a structural reason for that silence. Named brands have reputations worth protecting. When Jif had a contamination problem, that brand equity created real financial pressure to maintain standards. Great value has no equivalent. No name worth defending means no incentive beyond the bare minimum the regulation requires. Same additives as the premium brands. Less information, less accountability. That is the trade. Number 6. Reduced fat Jif or Skippy. This one sounds like the smart upgrade. Peanut butter is high in fat, so less fat should mean healthier. Millions of shoppers make this swap every year without asking the obvious follow-up question. What fills the space the fat left behind? Fat is what creates peanut butter's texture, that thick, dense, satisfying consistency. Remove it, and the product becomes dry and unpalatable. So, manufacturers replace it with corn syrup solids, dextrose, and additional sugar. The reduced fat formulas for both Jif and Skippy carry a higher total sugar load than the original full-fat versions of those same products. For a diabetic who reached for the reduced fat jar specifically to manage their blood sugar, that is the precise opposite of what the label implied. Less fat sounded like the responsible medical decision. More sugar is the actual result. And the calorie saving? A 2-tablespoon serving of reduced fat Jif saves approximately 15 calories compared to standard Jif. 15 calories in exchange for more sugar and a more processed formula. One number on the nutrition panel improves. Everything else moves in the wrong direction. That trade-off is never stated anywhere on the packaging. Number 5. Peter Pan. Peter Pan has been on the shelf since 1928. A storybook mascot implying childhood innocence and simplicity for nearly 100 years. A product named after a beloved fictional character does not feel like something that needs scrutiny. That presumption of safety is exactly what the brand has relied on for decades. In 2007, a salmonella outbreak linked to Peter Pan peanut butter sickened more than 700 people across 47 states. Investigators traced it to a ConAgra facility in Sylvester, Georgia, where they found a leaking roof, allowing rainwater into the production area. The contamination was systemic, not isolated to a single batch. ConAgra paid millions in damages and legal settlements. That outbreak is more than 15 years behind us. The facility was addressed, ConAgra paid what it owed, and there has not been a comparable incident since. That context matters and is worth stating clearly. What has not changed is the formula. Peter Pan still contains sugar, fully hydrogenated vegetable oil, and mono and diglycerides. Identical to Jif, identical to Skippy, with the same bottom-tier nutritionist assessment that applies to both. The boy who never grows up. The formula that never cleaned up. Number 4. Jif Natural. This one is for the shopper who already did the work. You read about hydrogenated oils, looked at the standard Jif label, and decided you were done with it. But you trusted the name, so you switched to the natural version within the same brand. Familiar name, word natural on the label. Felt like a responsible middle ground. Here is what Jif Natural actually contains. Peanuts, sugar, palm oil, salt. The hydrogenated oil is genuinely gone. That is a real change. But what replaced it is palm oil, added to do the exact same job. It prevents separation. It maintains that smooth, uniform texture. The ingredient changed, the function did not. The jar still does not separate, and the reason is still an added stabilizer that was never part of the original peanut. Palm oil carries its own documented concerns. The American Heart Association specifically recommends limiting it because of its saturated fat content and its link to elevated LDL cholesterol. Swapping hydrogenated oil for palm oil is not a resolution. It is a lateral move from one cardiovascular concern to a neighboring one. And the word natural on the label? The FDA does not regulate it. No defined standard, no certification required. Any brand can print it on any product. The shopper who switched to Jif Natural believing they had solved the problem did everything right. The reformulation quietly moved them from one issue to a different one, without disclosing the trade had been made. Different ingredient, same role, same question left open. Number 3. Justin's Classic Peanut Butter. This is the premium option, the upgrade purchase that health-conscious shoppers moved to when they had already rejected everything else on the shelf. The clean, minimal label, the founder's first name printed where a corporate logo would normally sit, the branding that signals transparency before you even read a word on the back. Justin's positioned itself from the beginning as the brand for the person who already knew enough to be finished with Jif and Skippy, not just a better version of the same product, a fundamentally different approach to what peanut butter should be. The 2-ingredient jar, the brand that health-conscious consumers discovered and then recommended to everyone around them as the one that had finally gotten it right. The ingredient list reads, dry roasted peanuts and palm oil. 2 ingredients. Shorter than every commercial brand covered so far in this investigation. For someone who had been reading about hydrogenated oils and added sugar and synthetic emulsifiers, 2 ingredients feels like arriving at the finish line, like the search is genuinely over and the right answer has been found. Then you read the 2nd ingredient, palm oil, added as a stabilizer, doing exactly what hydrogenated vegetable oil does in every commercial brand Justin's was positioned to replace. It stops the oil from separating at the top of the jar. It produces the consistent creamy texture that reads as premium quality, both on the label and when you open the lid. Different ingredient, same mechanical function, same reason it is in the formula. The American Heart Association's guidance on palm oil does not change because the rest of the label looks cleaner. Its saturated fat profile and its documented connection to elevated LDL cholesterol are concerns regardless of what surrounds that ingredient on the list. A cleaner label does not neutralize what the 2nd ingredient is doing in the jar. The Justin's Premium is genuine in one specific and meaningful way. No added sugar, no mono and diglycerides, no corn syrup solids. Those are real substantive improvements over every commercial brand already covered on this list, and they deserve to be stated clearly and without qualification. Justin's made real progress. The remaining gap is specifically the palm oil. For the shopper paying a meaningful price premium, often 2 to 3 times the cost of a standard jar, believing they had found the genuinely clean answer, the 2nd ingredient is where the question is still open. The label got cleaner. The formula did not fully close that distance. If this investigation has been useful so far, tapping the like button helps more people find it, and we are just about halfway through. A founder's name on the front, palm oil in the jar, most of the gap closed, not all of it. Number 2, Skippy. The one that held the number 1 position for 30 years before Jif took it. The striped jar. The thick, even texture that spread cleanly and reliably without tearing the bread. Multiple generations of American families grew up with Skippy as the default. The jar you pointed to in the store because it had always been there. It had always performed, and it had always been what you bought without thinking twice. That emotional history is real and genuinely earned across decades of consistent performance. Here is what that history was built on. In 2022, Skippy recalled more than 161,000 pounds of peanut butter across 19 states. Over 9,000 cases pulled back from distribution channels. The reason was stainless steel fragments inside the jars. A piece of manufacturing equipment failed during a mechanical repair, and metal from that equipment entered the peanut butter during production. The product had already moved through the supply chain. It was already in homes. No injuries were formally reported, but the metal fragments were inside jars that families had already purchased, already opened, and were actively using at the time of the recall. That is the kind of thing that reframes a brand you have trusted for 30 years. And it matters when you are deciding what to put in your cart. Now look at the ingredient label alongside that recall history. Skippy contains sugar, fully hydrogenated vegetable oils, and mono and diglycerides. Identical additive profile to Jif. The same hydrogenated oil functioning as a stabilizer to prevent natural separation. The same emulsifiers derived through the same industrial process. The same bottom-tier position in every nutritionist quality assessment of commercial peanut butter in this category. There is something worth understanding about the texture that made Skippy famous for 3 decades. Run a spoon through a fresh jar from the very top to the very bottom. Perfectly uniform the entire way. No oil pooling at the surface. No variation in density or consistency from the first scoop to the last one. For 30 years, consumers read that uniformity as a signal of quality and craftsmanship. A well-made food holds together like this. A premium product is consistent. That consistency is not coming from the peanuts. It is coming from the hydrogenated vegetable oil doing the specific job it was added to do. Real peanut butter separates. That is what ground peanuts do without chemical intervention. The fact that Skippy does not separate is not evidence of quality. It is evidence of what was added to prevent a natural process from occurring in a jar that is supposed to contain 2 ingredients. 30 years at number 1. A 2022 recall involving metal fragments in 161,000 pounds of product. An ingredient list that nutritionists rank at the bottom of every quality assessment in this category. All in the same jar, all behind the same striped label. Number 1, Jif. The number 1 selling peanut butter in America is carrying a formal warning letter from the FDA. Choosy moms choose Jif. 5 words that did not just sell a product, they attached the purchase to a parenting identity. Choosing Jif meant you were the parent who cared, the one who got it right, the one who chose the best. The marketing made that case so effectively, across so many years, and so many households, that millions of families never felt any reason to look further. The tagline had already answered the question of whether this brand was worth trusting. The jar felt like the obvious choice before anyone read a single word on the back. The familiarity of that name did the work the ingredient label never had to do. Here is what was inside the jar those families were buying without question. Jif contains fully hydrogenated vegetable oils, mono and diglycerides, and added sugar. The hydrogenated oil is added specifically to prevent oil separation and maintain the smooth, uniform texture consumers associate with the quality product. The mono and diglycerides are emulsifiers produced through the same hydrogenation process. Neither ingredient belongs in a product whose complete formula should be peanuts and salt. Nutritionists who formally assess commercial peanut butter quality consistently place Jif at the bottom of those evaluations. Specifically because of this additive profile, the brand with the highest market share in the entire category ranks lowest on ingredient quality. Now, the contamination history, and this one is documented in specific, verifiable detail. In 2022, a multi-state salmonella outbreak was traced directly to Jif peanut butter produced at the J.M. Smucker facility in Lexington, Kentucky. 21 people were sickened across 17 states. 4 of them required hospitalization. The FDA issued a formal warning letter to J.M. Smucker in January 2023, following the federal inspection conducted in response to the outbreak. What that inspection uncovered was not a single isolated production failure. It was a documented, recurring history of salmonella contamination at the same facility going all the way back to 2017. 5 years. The same plant, repeated contamination findings across a half-decade window. The #1 selling peanut butter in America continued shipping from that location throughout that entire period. The 2022 outbreak ultimately cost J.M. Smucker approximately $125 million, the financial consequence of a contamination history that predated the outbreak by 5 years. Then there is the aflatoxin question, and this is where the daily use pattern becomes directly relevant. Aflatoxin is a naturally occurring carcinogen produced by a specific mold that develops on peanuts during harvesting and storage conditions. Independent testing found Jif to contain 6.28 micrograms per kilogram of aflatoxins. A single exposure at that level is not the concern. The concern is accumulation. What happens when the same product is consumed daily, over months and years, by the same person? The child eating a Jif sandwich every school day for 10 years. The elderly person spreading it on toast every morning as their reliable, familiar source of protein. The pregnant woman choosing the most recognizable brand throughout a full pregnancy because the brand's dominance made it feel like the default safe choice. None of them were told about the 5-year contamination history at that facility. None of them chose to participate in the 2022 outbreak. Choosy moms choose Jif. The FDA chose to issue them a warning letter. Now that you know what to put back, here are the 3 that actually held up. One thing worth understanding before we get to them, because it changes how you shop from here forward. Real peanut butter has 2 ingredients. Peanuts, salt. That is the complete product as it existed before food manufacturers decided that natural oil separation was a problem worth engineering away with hydrogenated oil and that plain roasted peanuts needed added sugar to be appealing enough to sell at scale. The oil that rises to the top of a natural peanut butter jar is not a quality defect. It is not a sign that something went wrong. It is confirmation. Confirmation that nothing was added to stop the peanuts from behaving exactly the way ground peanuts naturally behave. Stir it once when you open the jar. Store it upside down between uses. The separation does not return. That is the complete maintenance requirement of a product made from exactly what its label says it is made from. 1 stir. That is it. 3 brands never made the trades the others made. Here they are. Best option number 3. Smucker's Natural Peanut Butter. 1 ingredient. Peanuts. That is the entire list for the unsalted version. The salted version adds salt, and that is the only addition any nutritionist would consider appropriate in a product that is supposed to be peanut butter and nothing else. No hydrogenated oil, no palm oil, no mono and diglycerides, no added sugar, no stabilizers of any kind. The oil separates at the top of the jar because nothing was introduced to prevent it. That separation is not a flaw in the product. It is the proof of what is and is not in the formula. When you see that oil layer, you are looking at evidence that the ingredient list is telling the complete truth. Nutritionists consistently rank Smucker's Natural as the highest quality accessible peanut butter available on the mainstream market. Not the highest among natural options in a narrow subcategory. The highest overall across every brand at every price point in peer-reviewed nutritionist quality assessments of the commercial peanut butter category. One piece of context worth stating clearly, because it will come up. Smucker's is the parent company of Jif. That is a fact, it is public information, and it belongs in this conversation. The natural line is manufactured in a separate operation from the Jif production and has no documented connection to the contamination history associated with the Lexington, Kentucky facility. This recommendation is specifically and only for the natural line. If the shared corporate ownership is a concern for you personally, the #1 pick in this section has no connection to that history whatsoever. Here is what makes this the most practically important recommendation on the entire best list. Smucker's Natural is not a specialty store product that requires a trip to a different retailer or an online subscription. It sits on the same shelf as Jif and Skippy at Walmart, Target, and Kroger at a price point that competes directly with both of them. You do not have to change where you shop. You do not have to spend more money. You reach for the jar sitting right next to the one you have been buying for years. Same aisle, same price. 1 ingredient instead of 6. Best option number 2. Teddy All-Natural Peanut Butter. Dry roasted peanuts. Salt. That is the complete ingredient list. No palm oil, no stabilizers, no added sugar, no hydrogenated oil. The oil separates at the top because that is what ground peanuts do when nothing has been added to stop them. Stir it. Teddy has been making peanut butter in Massachusetts since 1928, the exact same year Peter Pan launched its flying storybook mascot and began building a brand identity around a fictional character and emotional nostalgia. Teddy built its identity around 2 ingredients instead, and that decision was not made once at the founding, and quietly revised later when larger competitors started adding stabilizers, sweeteners, and emulsifiers to compete for market share and shelf appeal. It has been made consistently, without exception, across nearly 100 years of continuous production. No recall history appears anywhere in this investigation for this brand. No contamination findings. No warning letters from the FDA. No reformulations quietly replacing one problematic additive with a cleaner-sounding one. No and/or ingredient listings that shift batch to batch. Just the same 2-ingredient formula it started with, held consistently across a century, while every major commercial competitor made a different set of choices. Regional shoppers across New England have been buying Teddy for generations, not because of a tagline or a national advertising campaign, but because the brand earned that loyalty through consistent ingredient honesty across a time span that most food brands cannot claim. When a brand has had nearly 100 years to cut corners and chose not to once, that track record means something that a marketing claim simply cannot replicate. Available at major grocery retailers throughout the Northeast and online for delivery nationwide. Best option number 1. Once again organic peanut butter. This is the only brand in this entire investigation, on either side of the list, that tests the peanuts before production begins and then tests the finished peanut butter again after production is complete. 2 separate tests. Every single batch. Not spot checks, not periodic audits. Every batch. The testing protocols are publicly disclosed. The company maintains a full traceability database that documents the complete chain of custody for every ingredient, from the source farm to the sealed finished jar. That level of documentation does not exist anywhere else in this category among the brands investigated here. No hydrogenated oil, no palm oil, no added sugar, no mono and diglycerides. USDA certified organic. Consider what that double testing standard actually means in context. Every brand on the avoid side of this investigation left the aflatoxin question completely and openly unanswered. No published testing, no sourcing disclosure, no traceability documentation of any kind. The brands with the largest market share and the most consumer trust provided the least verified information about the most consistent daily exposure concern in this product category. Once again is the one brand that answers that question twice per batch and makes the results publicly available for anyone to verify. That distinction matters most for specific buyers in specific situations. Pregnant women who need the aflatoxin concern addressed with independently documented evidence. Not a marketing claim, actual published test results before consuming a product daily throughout an entire pregnancy. Anyone managing a cancer diagnosis who is systematically reducing dietary toxic load across every food category and needs confirmation that the testing actually happened and produced verifiable results. Parents who want the most thoroughly verified clean option available at any price point in the entire peanut butter category. This is not a niche concern for a small group of highly cautious shoppers. These are the same buyers that the #1 selling brand in this category, Jif, has been actively marketing to for decades as their primary audience. Families, parents who care, people choosing what to feed their children every single school day. Once again is the brand that actually answered the question those buyers were implicitly asking every time they reached for the jar with the most trusted name on the shelf. Available at Whole Foods, natural grocery retailers, and online for delivery nationwide. 7 brands, a 5-year documented contamination history at the same facility producing the #1 selling peanut butter in the country. A 2022 recall involving 161,000 pounds of product pulled back due to metal fragments discovered in jars already in homes. A 2007 outbreak that reached 47 states and sickened more than 700 people. Hydrogenated oils and synthetic emulsifiers in the most trusted name in the category. Palm oil quietly replacing hydrogenated oil in the natural version of that same brand. Same structural function, cleaner sounding label, a reduced fat formula delivering meaningfully more sugar in exchange for 15 fewer calories. A premium 2-ingredient jar, where the second ingredient raises the same cardiovascular question as the formula it was marketed to replace. And 3 brands that contain what peanut butter has always been when it is made correctly. Smucker's Natural, 1 ingredient, on the same shelf as Jif at the same price. No reason to walk past it. Teddy, 2 ingredients, nearly 100 years of not adding a third one, not once, not even when the commercial pressure to do so was at its highest. Once again organic, the only brand in this category with a published double testing protocol for aflatoxin contamination, covering both the raw peanuts and the finished product, every single batch. Next time you are standing in that aisle, flip the jar over before you put it in the cart. Read the ingredient list from the top down. If you see hydrogenated oil, palm oil listed as a stabilizer, mono and diglycerides or sugar appearing after peanuts, you now have everything you need to make a different call. The jar that feels the most familiar is not always the jar that contains what you think it does. The brand that spent the most on making you trust it is not always the brand that earned that trust through what it actually put inside the container. Now you know exactly what you are looking at, and the next time someone you know reaches for the jar they have always bought without questioning it, this is worth sharing with them.